Intel's 14,000 series of processors are about to come out, and they look to be kind of like the 13,000 series but slightly faster. Boring. But Intel has also been talking about their next generation stuff. There's a lot to cover, but I've picked 3 main reasons for why it's exciting, which I'll briefly cover in this video. Reason number 1, tiles. So first of all, Intel are finally splitting their processors up into multiple parts. AMD has been doing this since 2017 already, in the form of their chiplet designs, but Intel's method is slightly different. AMD strings multiple chiplets together using Infinity Fabric, meaning that instead of using one chiplet for 4 cores, they can use 2 chiplets to get 8 cores, or 4 chiplets to get 16 cores. The way they connect these together comes at a latency and power consumption cost. Intel, on the other hand, are using a technology they're calling Foveros, which essentially connects several tiles together. Each of these tiles being like a separate chiplet with a different purpose, so they've got one for graphics, another for processing cores, and so on. And this kind of connection comes with minimal power consumption cost. Being modular, it allows for each individual bit to be made separately and from a different manufacturing plant, which I'm imagining would enable all sorts of benefits. For a start, each bit is smaller, which helps minimise cost and defects. Second, some parts of the processor may benefit more than other bits from using the most expensive and advanced nodes, while others may be able to save money by using a cheaper, older one. So this may be why they mix and match 3 different types here. It may also help with supply to use more than one node. But the most immediate benefit I can see to this modular approach is that Intel is no longer bound to creating things from just one large die. Instead, they can use multiple smaller parts, which enables larger, more complex, more modular processor designs overall. Reason number 2, a third core type. Up until now, Intel's best counter to AMD's chiplets has been their E-cores, which they designed to be a core that was as small as physically possible, which enabled improved multi-core performance on their processors without the need for a much larger chip. Well, now they're making a third type of core, which happens to be an E-core again, only it's now like a whole self-contained processor situated within just one of their new processor's tiles. You see this SoC tile? This here is the mini processor. They've called this a low power island, which comes with its own memory, graphics processing, and 2 E-cores to handle light workloads. And the purpose of this is to keep power consumption as low as possible. So when work comes in for the processor to do, it tries to get it done on this little self-contained, power-efficient bit of the processor first. If it can't do this and the workload proves too demanding, then it will pass it on to the other, more powerful E-cores on the processor. And if even these aren't enough for it, then it awakens the powerful P-cores. This is the opposite of how Intel processors currently work, which involves all the work going to the fast and power-hungry P-cores first, before being passed down to the E-cores if it deems it beneficial to do so. So this change has all been done in the name of power efficiency, which I initially thought was done for their laptops, but now I can see benefits all round from this new strategy, provided it doesn't take too long for it to figure out that I want my gaming to be handled by the fastest P-cores. It's not so much a third type of core, so much as it is a place for work to go before being assigned elsewhere. Reason number 3, nodes. Intel have had a pretty rough time with their nodes, infamously stuck on 40nm for much longer than they had intended, and they're currently sitting on 10nm while their competitors have moved to much better and smaller nodes several times, which is another reason why Intel has struggled to compete in terms of power consumption and core counts. Well, now Intel's playing catch up, promising 5 different nodes in 4 years, but they are all misleadingly named. Intel 7 is still 10nm, Intel 4 is 7nm, Intel 3 appears to be a refined version of Intel 4, then because it gets difficult to drop down under 2nm without decimal points, they're calling it 20A, only it's probably not 2nm, but they're just using that name to say that it's roughly equivalent to what their competitors might be using at this stage. It's been a long time since any naming scheme of any processor has accurately represented the size of its transistors. So this 20A process is essentially 2nm in every way except actual size. In conclusion, this has been an extremely simplified summary of a very complex new processor architecture, but just take away from this that Intel are catching up after years of being behind in several areas. And it's interesting that this time around, performance improvements have taken a back seat. Sure, they've briefly mentioned that their new E and P cores are improved, saying that their performance cores have become more efficient and their efficient cores more performant. Raw speed hasn't been Intel's weak point recently, and improvements in this area seem to be less important than the other changes that I've covered in this video. The focus seems to be on moving away from being at a chiplet and node disadvantage, in order for Intel to level the playing field against their competition. So there will be all sorts of benefits for this for Intel, but for us I hope it will lead to more power efficient processors, which are hopefully faster as well.